Good evening and welcome, everyone. I am so honored to once again be joined by former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey. Betsy, great to see you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be riding shotgun for you, Jen. And we have such a lineup tonight, starting with U.S. Florida Congressman Michael Waltz. He is brimming with optimism that the Republicans will take back the House in the midterm elections. And when I say optimism, informed optimism. So take it away, Jen.
That's right, Betsy. You know, November is only 9 months away now, and the failing Biden administration, along with a House Speaker that's obsessed with January 6th, is setting up for a red tsunami in the midterms, as yet another House Democrat has announced they will not seek re-election. The latest to ditch Team Pelosi is veteran Colorado Congressman Ed Perlmutter. He becomes the 26th House Democrat to retire from his position, and at this rate, I doubt he's going to be the last. This comes as it had been revealed that former top Kamala Harris advisor Simone Sanders actually ditched Team Biden to work for MSNBC, of all places. I guess that's no surprise. And at this point, who can blame them for abandoning ship? A disaster in Afghanistan, a raging border crisis, a supply chain crisis, record high prices on everything from gas to groceries. And all the Democrats can do is talk about January 6th. Once again, Pelosi brought up the riot earlier today to defend the Democrats' insane push to federalize our elections.
What the Republicans are doing across the country is really a legislative continuation of what they did on January 6th, which is to undermine our democracy, to undermine the integrity of our elections.
There's no question she has got to go, and the Republican expected to take her job next November is already planning on some big moves. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says if he gains the gavel, he will remove both Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell from serving on the Intelligence Committee, as well as booting Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. Republican leadership is needed now more than ever, as Democrats are also blatantly lying about COVID. Last week, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor claimed that over 100,000 children were hospitalized with COVID, a complete lie that even the CDC director fact-checked. But nonetheless, the COVID fear-mongering can't be turned off. Listen to Sunny Hostin of The View say Sotomayor may be wrong on the numbers, but she's actually right if you really think about it.
While, she may not be accurate for current hospitalizations in children, she is correct that we have more children in the hospital now more than ever before.
What a complete joke. Forget that even Fauci admitted that these kids are being hospitalized with COVID, not for COVID. But the Democrats will never let this pandemic end. Here's Hostin again ripping into the CDC for not doing enough to scare Americans about COVID.
I'm really concerned about this new CDC guidance. I know that the science is evolving. I know that our knowledge is evolving. But now the CDC is saying that, after 5 days of being infected, you don't have to test negative, but you can go out, you can go back to work and just wear a mask. I don't believe that.
And folks, it's not just COVID. Republican leadership is also desperately needed on the world stage as well, as President Biden once again is struggling with another major foreign policy situation. This time it's with Russian troops on Ukraine and Kazakhstan's border. Vladimir Putin seems to now be trolling Biden and NATO, putting out unrealistic demands and saying today the troops will remain in the area until the job is done. This is how our feckless administration responded.
As we have said many times, it's important for the Russians to observe the Minsk agreements, to pull back and to cease the violence. We've been very clear about that.
And as for these Republican solutions we've been talking about, well, Senator Ted Cruz has an idea to push back against Putin. He introduced a bill to place sanctions on Russian pipeline Nord Stream 2. But according to reports, the State Department has now sent officials to Capitol Hill to lobby against the sanctions bill. Well, joining us now to discuss is Florida Republican Congressman and retired Green Beret Michael Waltz. Congressman, so glad to have you with us tonight. I'm curious, why would Team Biden not want sanctions on the Nord Stream pipeline?
Action. I mean, you're actually watching it happen real time. I was just out in Ukraine, visited with Ukrainian special forces and some of our own that are helping them and training them. Small numbers, but that are helping them prepare to defend themselves against what could be the largest land invasion since World War II. And the entire premise, when anybody talked about what they were hearing from Biden's White House, was don't upset the Russians, don't do anything that could provoke Putin. Let's concede and hope they come to the table, and let's play nice and hope Putin plays nice too. Well, guess what? They tried that in 2014 under Obama, and what did Putin do? He invaded Crimea and he invaded eastern Ukraine, and he continued to press into Syria and continued to take advantage of weakness. And what Russia smells right now, Iran, North Korea, China, is weakness in the White House. And they're going to do everything they can to take advantage of it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're here tonight, Congressman. And you have looked closely not only at the threat from Russia, but also from China. You wrote an interesting op-ed for Breitbart, ripping into what you called the Genocide Olympics and their corporate sponsors. But when I saw that article, I said to myself, why aren't we calling this the Wuhan virus Olympics? Of course, the persecution of the Uyghurs is terrible, but more than 800,000 Americans have died from COVID, and worldwide, deaths are in the millions. This is a worldwide humanitarian crime. And why aren't we calling attention to that rather than simply this one aspect of cruelty toward the Uyghurs?
Well, I'll call it both, because you're absolutely right. With COVID that was unleashed on the world, that they've absolutely covered up and not cooperated. By the way, the Democrats have had 0 hearings on COVID origins in the last 2 years. With the ongoing millions of Muslims in concentration camp, slave labor that is making these companies products. And by the way, I am just sick and tired of hearing about social justice getting preached to us by the likes of Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Intel. We can go down the list, but yet they turn a blind eye with people getting slaughtered in China and actual slavery going on to make their products. So we're going to call out the hypocrisy, but the biggest piece is all of these companies have their hand out to the Defense Department. They all make millions and billions of taxpayer dollars on our military, but then they send that money right over to Beijing, whether it's through Olympic sponsorships or otherwise. And that is what's funding the Chinese military buildup that those same soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines are going to have to one day face. So I had a bill in the defense bill, and all of these companies, it's on record, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to lobbyists to lobby against it and to kill it. And you know, we're going to call out that hypocrisy at every turn. What happened to corporate patriotism, right, and what happened to just giving a darn about your country and about that flag rather than making your next quarterly earnings?
And by the way, many of these companies were the same ones that joined in to boycott Atlanta, boycott Georgia.
That's right.
When there was a controversy there about their own voting legislation. But boy, they're certainly not going to boycott China, are they?
No, that's absolutely right. They'll boycott Georgia over laws passed by an elected legislature, but won't do a darn thing when it comes to a dictatorship that has a mass rape campaign of women going on, has a mass sterilization campaign of certain ethnic groups and minorities that they don't like, and is stamping out freedom all over the world. Yet we see the likes of Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan, Larry Fink of BlackRock, just falling over themselves to apologize and bow down to the Chinese dollar. It's pathetic. But what has me, again, so upset is it's fueling their military buildup, in Chairman Xi's own words, that he's going to use to replace the American dream with the China dream. And I'll be damned if I have my kids or grandkids growing up in a world led by Chinese communists, or for that matter, by Democrat socialists back here in the United States.
Yeah, and Congressman, you talk about these woke corporations, and that's also been something that we've talked about extensively on this program within our own military. We brought you on to talk about it as well. I know that today you were named the ranking member of the subcommittee on readiness within the House Armed Services Committee. The Marines kicked out over 200 troops for refusing the vaccine, and now the Navy has gone woke. Boot camp will include classes on hazing and racism. What do you make of all of this and how this is going to affect our military's readiness?
I can't think of anything more destructive. And I've introduced legislation to stop it. And we get in the majority, we are going to ban CRT in the United States military. I fought it. It's being taught at West Point, of all places. It's being taught at Annapolis. But I can't think of anything more destructive to unit morale than teaching your fellow soldiers to focus on race and skin color. Look, the Army I joined, you wear camouflage. You bleed green. The only colors you're worried about are the red, white, and blue on your right shoulder on that American flag. You're focused on mission and defending this great nation, and it's all about merit. And it's colorblind in the foxhole. I can tell you for certain the enemy's bullets don't give a darn about black, white, or brown, religion, socioeconomic background, or anything else. All they care about is that we're American. That's all our military leadership should care about. And as the ranking Republican on that committee, that's exactly the mentality we're going to push.
Well, let me ask you this. Biden is shifting back to Biden's stance on the world stage. He's spoken with Putin twice over the phone. There are now ongoing special talks in Geneva. White House Press Secretary Jenn Psaki was pressed on those ongoing negotiations, and she kind of just rambled about Russian disinformation. Listen to this.
We are preparing ourselves for the possibility and likelihood, no one should be surprised, I should say, if Russia spreads disinformation about commitments that have not been made, or if it goes even further and instigates something as a pretext for further destabilizing activity. And so we would continue to urge everyone not to fall for any attempts to push disinformation out there.
So, Congressman, the U.S. is attempting to assure our European allies that we stand with them. But, after that Afghanistan debacle, how can anybody trust us at this point?
Well, they don't. And I can tell you, I've heard from several allies, the message that they received loud and clear was jihad had won, democracy is lost, and America won't stand with you. That's the message that all of our allies got. And then when I'm out in Ukraine, what they're hearing is that Biden's going to be really tough if and after they're invaded. What they need is toughness now. And I want to be clear, nobody's talking about hundreds of thousands of U.S. boots on the ground. They are ready and willing to fight for their own freedom and their own sovereignty, but they are asking for some help and some equipment as they face one of the largest land armies in the Russian army in the world. And rather than sending them that equipment, Biden's sitting on it because he doesn't want to upset Putin, again, in the hopes it'll play nice. And just one more thing on the Olympics. The last time Putin invaded was just 2 months after the Olympics were hosted in Sochi. We all know what China has done since the Olympics were hosted in 2008 in China. We all know what the Nazis did after 1936. Dictators love the Olympics. It's a propaganda platform. And everybody there waving their flag, athletes and all, are turning a blind eye to gross atrocities, human rights abuses, COVID released on the world, and all of their other aggressive, despicable behavior. So I think everybody that is sponsoring it should be ashamed. And here's the kicker. The IOC boycotted South Africa over apartheid, but yet, and all the athletes agreed with it, all the companies agreed with it, yet when it comes to genocide, they're all silent. And the difference is the money that they're making. The hypocrisy is sickening, and I'm going to continue to expose them at every turn.
Well, Congressman Michael Waltz, we appreciate that and all that you do, and it's always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. God bless.
You too.